Hello, everybody. Welcome to your very favorite Bronze Age Spider-Man podcast. Here comes the Spidercast. I am your co-host, Mike L., and as always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell. And today we're going to be looking at some Spider-Man appearances in the Avengers comic from 1983, I believe this is.
That's right. And Spidey eventually did become a regular Avenger in the 2000s, I think, when written by Brian Michael Bendis, but there was a good chunk of time for, 40 years when it was understood that he just worked better on his own and was never an Avenger, was never part of any team. I personally prefer him that way. I'm not sure about you, Josh. Do you have a preference?
Yeah, I kind of like him on his own. I think that it is definitely fun to see him team up with other people and other heroes, but
right.
I think it always works best when they're kind of thrown together and kind of forced to work together on a mission, and then they go their own way again. When he's part of a team, it's fun, but I feel like it mutes him a little bit because you really have to share the story with a whole cast of characters, and I think he's such a strong character that it kind of muddies it a little bit, but.
Yeah, it's also interesting because we'll talk more about this later, but this is written by the regular scribe of Amazing Spider-Man, Roger Stern, but I did find Spider-Man's characterization really different to the point that I think that Roger Stern might have been overcompensating with trying to make him not fit so that he could justify him not joining the Avengers. But we can talk more about that later.
Sure, yeah.
So let's just, there's 3 issues here. We'll just briefly, do you want to go issue by issue or do you want to do the whole run?
Let's try to do the whole run and talk about it as a whole, because I feel like it really fits together in the story. Or at least we could talk about the first issue and then maybe the second and third together.
Right. Yeah, because the first issue is a little bit separate. So, so in the first issue, we're kind of picking up on the ongoing Avengers storyline, in which the Vision has been kind of, Vision is an android, so he's kind of knocked unconscious, and Scarlet Witch is worried about him. And the Avengers are kind of, they've got this new member, Star Fox, a.k.a. Eros, who's actually Thanos' brother.
Right.
She-Hulk is a recent addition, and they're kind of, juggling back and forth between the different members and what they're all doing. In the middle of all this, there is a character named what's his name, the Wizard, who's kind of plotting and scheming. Yeah. And in the midst of all this, She-Hulk runs into Spider-Man on the street and casually mentions that she makes $1,000 a week from being a member of the Avengers. And then Spidey's like, wait a minute, I rejected membership and you guys make $1,000 a week? Which, by the way, that reminded me, there was an appearance by Peter Parker in the 80s, which we missed. I don't know how I missed it, but in Avengers number 221. So we might have to go back and do that later. Yeah, so anyway. So basically this issue, they kind of fight the Wizard and Captain America outsmarts them. And that's pretty much a typical story, but, it's decent. And then, again, the one thing I want to point out is I really like the characterization of the Wasp, because Roger Stern was building up the Wasp in this story, in this ongoing story, as being a really strong leader. Obviously, she was probably, I think, the first female leader of the Avengers, and she's also standing in the shadow of Captain America, who sometimes comes into conflict with her. But in this story, he kind of... Roger Stern kind of hits you over the head with it, but in the very last panel, we kind of find out how earlier in the story, the Wasp had sent Scarlet Witch on this mission, which she didn't want to do. She wanted to stay and watch the Vision, but instead, Wasp sent Scarlet Witch on the mission and made Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, stay and watch the Vision. And and Scarlet Witch is like, I thought the Wasp was silly for sending me on that mission, but in a way, it was something I needed to think the others... it was something that I needed. I think the others needed it too. And then Captain Marvel says, then that's why she sent you, Wanda, because she knew what you needed. And that's why she leads the Avengers.
Right.
So I thought that was really cool. Do you want to talk about the characterization of the Avengers before we jump into the next issue?
Sure, yeah. I feel like it felt pretty normal. Like Cap felt like a leader. I think that they did a really great job of making Janet more of a leader role in this.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've read some issues of Avengers where she's the leader, and then some where she kind of feels more like a sidekick to Ant-Man, which really sucks because she is such a strong character. But I really liked her in this issue as well. I have to say though, I think my favorite character in all three would be She-Hulk.
Okay. Yep.
She's really fun, and I love her in her comics as well, and it's
Sure.
always really fun to see her because she's kind of this like no BS tough guy. Like she's got this like, you know, bullheaded attitude, and I just really love her characterization, and I feel like she's the most consistent throughout all three as well.
Right. Well, you know, I've actually read quite a few other Avengers comics, not a lot, but, you know, issues by Roy Thomas, issues by Steve Englehart. Mm-hmm. And I've recently read some issues written by Jim Shooter and David Michelinie. But I got to say, as I always suspected, I think Roger Stern, he might be the best Avengers writer, at least for the way that he's able to juggle the different members and to give them all something to do and to make each of them unique and to, you know, and he's so good at following around the different characters to their different subplots. I think that's the one thing I noticed, even when I was a kid. And I like the way that it's like Captain America's relationship with Wasp is different from Captain America's relationship with Star Fox. And, you know, the way that She-Hulk plays off Spider-Man is different from the way whoever plays off Spider-Man. So he's just really good at that. And that's the one thing I really noticed in this issue.
Yeah, and I think Star Fox is the character I'm least familiar with.
Right.
And I know that I've read other comics with him, but I couldn't tell you one thing about him. And I think that after reading this, I kind of get an idea of who he is.
Sure.
He's kind of this like space wizard, ladies man who has kind of just been thrown into being an Avenger, and he's like a trainee on the Avengers, and it seems like a really fun story. He hasn't revealed all of his powers to the Avengers yet, and he's a little scared to kind of reveal who he really is to them, and in fear that they will kind of kick him off the team. That we find out. But yeah, I think just in these three issues, I really know what this character is and what his personality is. And comparing this to the Defenders, which we have read a bunch of already for the podcast. Like, I couldn't tell you one thing about Gargoyle. The only reason I know anything about Gargoyle is that one Marvel team up issue with Spider-Man. That was a really good issue. I couldn't tell you anything about any of the other characters really that I'm not already familiar with. Like they don't actually spend enough time with them for you to get to know them. And in this story, all three issues, you really get a chance to kind of know what each character is about, and they all have their like time to shine. The Wasp again only has like a couple of lines here and there, but you still get a little bit of an arc with her. Like she gives Scarlet Witch a command. She sticks to her guns, even though Scarlet Witch is kind of like, I don't really want to do this. She's, thorough, and then by the end, it turns out that she's right, and you don't have to have her there to get more characterization of the Wasp. Like, you know by following Scarlet Witch's story and Captain Marvel's story, and you still get more of each character as the story goes on, because they're all like so well tied together.
Good point.
Is it a great story? Like, I don't think it's fantastic, but I think that it's brilliant how all of the characters feel like they actually belong together, and this is a real team.
Good point.
So I really enjoyed the first issue. I think it was my favorite of the three.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's issue 235, and we're going to talk more about it. You know what? Let's talk briefly about the art.
Spider-Man? Oh, yeah, sure.
No, let's talk about, because Spider-Man is barely in this issue, only for a couple panels. We'll talk more about him later.
Yeah, I will say, though, real quick, about Spider-Man, I think that it's really great that he's introduced in this issue very briefly.
Right.
He doesn't overstay his welcome. It feels kind of like a little cameo that he's here, and it's opening up for the story next issue, and it doesn't feel out of place. Like Spider-Man and She-Hulk know each other, and it feels like they're just bumping into each other in the street, and then it kind of like lets you coast right into the next story seamlessly.
Good point. Yeah.
So I really did enjoy that.
Right. Roger Stern, once again, a master of setting up plots and subplots and foreshadowing, right? Yeah. Let's talk about the art briefly. So this art is by Bob Budiansky, who we at the Comic Book Syndicate know and love because he is the creator of all the Transformers names and character bios from the 80s, or most of them. And he was also the guest at our comic convention Action a few years ago. And
awesome.
Not only was he an editor and a writer, but he was also an artist. And I thought the art was, I mean, it's not flashy, but I definitely thought it was good. And I've always thought he's a good artist. What do you think of the art here?
Yeah, it feels good. It feels like Avengers art. I know it. I know it's an Avengers comic, but it seemed really familiar. I don't know. I couldn't put my finger on exactly what it reminded me of, but it really felt like it suited this story. I think that the characters are consistent throughout. If they didn't have their costumes on, I feel like I would still know who each character was.
Sure.
And that's saying a lot, considering in the 80s, a lot of the times, all female superheroes were drawn the exact same.
Right,
and
right.
I really feel like I can look at Hope and Wanda and know and can tell the difference between the two characters. And they're both like white, brown-haired women, and normally they would be drawn the exact same. So I think that for that alone, I'd say that the art is super successful in this comic. Again, it's not. I don't think it's like fantastic, like mind-blowing art, but I didn't pull me out, and it really kind of did its job of showing who each character was. So yeah, I like the art.
Yeah, and one thing I want to point out is one reason you said it seemed familiar or it seemed like Avengers art is because it was inked by Joe Sinnot, who is Jack Kirby's probably his most popular collaborator. He inked Jack Kirby all through the 60s on Fantastic Four. He didn't really do the Avengers, but it definitely gives it that classic Marvel feel. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that could be part of it. Yeah. So yeah, definitely I'm a big fan of this art. So we're going to jump to issue 236 now.
Yeah.
And we got Spidey on the cover here. Spider-Man and Avenger? Oh, by the way, I want to point out, I know that the older Avengers logo is the one that they used for the movies, and it's kind of like the go-to logo. I always was a big fan of this Avengers logo. What do you think of it?
Yeah, it's kind of nice and fresh. It feels more like a futuristic.
Yeah.
I never really got the arrows.
No one does. Yeah. What is the point of that? You're right.
Yeah. Like I don't think I've ever really thought about it too much, but like I'm not sure what the whole arrow like theme is throughout the logos, because it's either in the A or in the G. I think that there's a logo or something like.
I think it's definitely in the
G.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In 235, it's not in the A. It's in the G.
Really? Huh.
Yeah. It's got this like weird hook.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine, but I always I was exposed to this logo and the one after it when I was a kid, so I kind of just always thought these were the better logos, and then they ended up using the other one for the movies, but whatever, that's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got a, I think this one is a different artist. Yes, Al Milgram on art. Yikes. Right. Al Milgram from Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man. Before we even get to the story, what'd you think of the art in this one?
It definitely feels more rushed. It's less. The proportions are a little bit off sometimes, and like there's one panel where all of the characters are running together. I can't remember where it was, but it doesn't look like they're running. Like it looks like they're posing in a running. Like if you ask somebody to pose like they were running, it was like, you know what I mean? Like it just felt very like posed and not very solid. You couldn't really feel the volume on it as much as the last one.
Sure.
Not that I hated it, but it just, I think after reading the previous issue, This one was not as strong.
Sure. Now, yeah, do you want to swap quickly, and do you want to quickly summarize the plot for this one?
Yeah, I'll kind of combine the two, I
Yeah,
think.
sure, sure. There you go.
So, I love the intro. This is definitely my favorite intro of the three. Like, this is the most fun, I think,
Sure.
I had reading it. We kind of check in on the Avengers, see what they're up to. Scarlet Witch is typing away on the computer. Cap is looking at Vision, kind of sad that he can't revive him. Star Fox is there talking with Wasp about the stars. She-Hulk's having a bath, and Jarvis is, bringing her a coffee that, she's ordered. And the alarm goes off that there's an intruder. She jumps out of the tub. She puts a towel on. They all run together to the door. And who's there but Spider-Man? Well, it's about time you people showed up. I was beginning to think I had to hang around here all day before someone thought to look for me. Love it. The answer should be obvious, folks. I've come to join up. I want to be an Avenger. Take me. I'm yours. I love it. It's so great. Mm-hmm. Spider-Man is built himself like a web hammock that he's lounging on. It's so fun.
It's almost like something Bugs Bunny would do.
Yeah, yeah, kind of. And I think that I think going off on a tangent here when you had mentioned earlier about Spider-Man not working as well in an ensemble, I feel like when he is working with other people, they amp up his teenage goofy side.
Right.
And he's less of a detective. He's less of thinking things through. He kind of just jumps in and does it. He becomes almost like the hothead of the group.
Right.
And you see that a little bit more here, and it's definitely tied into the story that he just kind of jumps in and does whatever. Because you'll see he asks to be an Avenger, and they kind of kick him out and say, sorry, we don't have room on the team for you. And we got to go anyways because we have an emergency mission. So the Avengers all hop into a plane, and Spider-Man webs himself to the Quinjet as it's flying off. And I think She-Hulk makes a comment about how something seemed off, but we're okay now.
Yeah, very detailed. That was funny.
Yeah. They land at Project Pegasus, where they have to go answer a distress beacon, and Spider-Man reveals himself, and Cap kind of convinces them, okay, we'll bring Spider-Man along. We'll see if he kind of has what it takes to join the team. And it turns out that the distress beacon was because lava men were attacking the Institute. Right. And so it turns out that Project Pegasus, the underground building, I guess, or labs, were built too close to the lava men's territory, and they were seeping the lava for energy to power this plant. So it was kind of all just a misunderstanding. Cap talks it through with them. And there's this weird subplot that I just don't understand about Captain Marvel and Wasp staying behind and not coming right away. And Scarlet Witch as well, sorry.
Yeah,
it's so weird.
I
don't understand why.
I think Wasp specifies that in case they need backup or something. Yeah, she gives a reason.
Right.
I don't know if it's a good reason. It
doesn't make sense.
No, I know, but
we'll stay behind in case you need backup. They get there, they're there's lava men everywhere. We need backup. Come quick. And then they show up. And I think it was because Captain Marvel, we learn, when she shows up, her power disrupts some sort of cage that is locking up, or that has Blackout locked up, and he is able to escape. But it doesn't. He runs away and he does his own thing. It's not like he fights the Avengers then and there. He's in a completely different level of this facility. So whether she showed up right away or after, it didn't matter when he escaped. So I think that them staying behind didn't matter. They could have.
Right.
He could have escaped when they all immediately got there and still done his thing and started planning his escape. Like, it just didn't make sense that they came later, and they really kind of like pointed that out, like, stay behind. We'll call if we need backup. Anyways, weird subplot.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, Cap talks to the Lava Men. They go back to their home, and Blackout sees Moonstone locked up in a cage. He frees her, and they come up with a plan together to free two other villains, Rhino and Electro, so that way they can level the Project Pegasus facility once and for all, and then escape. We kind of roll into the third issue with this story.
Right.
The three of them kind of have a conflict within their kind of like new team that they've created, and then everything's kind of sorted out by the end of it. The Avengers they meet up with O'Brien.
Right.
I can't remember his superhero name.
The Guardsman.
The Guardsman, right.
Right.
They team up with O'Brien, who works there, and I think he was incapacitated by the Lava Men, and he's like, "Come on, try my new tube elevator." So they all go into this tube elevator, and it's pretty much like the bubble tube from Willy Wonka,
right?
Where they all go in this tube and they start floating up, and then after they're halfway, Spider-Man says, "Hey, O'Brien, your tube's real impressive, but it looks to be at least 20 stories tall. What happens if the power goes out?" And just as Spider-Man says that, of course, the power cuts out and they all fall.
Yeah.
Spider-Man saves them before the people who can't fly hit the ground. And that's when the supervillains start revealing themselves. So they've kind of teamed up to stop them. They don't really have much of a plan, it seems like. Rhino just starts coming out and destroying things and throwing Avengers around. Electro and Blackout are, Electro's kind of like boosted with this backpack that's making his electricity even stronger. Blackout's using his like crystal light energy to like freeze people. And we don't really see much of Moonstone, and then it turns out that Moonstone had run away to go to the controls to set the place to blow up, and used the other three as a distraction, and then slips away. So the Avengers have to find a way to stop this machine from blowing up, and they can't catch the bad guys because they have to save their own lives.
Right.
And everybody else in this facility. They end up, Captain Marvel ends up turning herself into her energy form and going into the computer. And with Spider-Man's help, the two of them figure out a way to stop the explosion from happening. And that's where the story pretty much ends. We kind of get a little bit of an epilogue where Spider-Man is in the mansion getting ready to join the Avengers. They call their government agency that's in charge of the Avengers to request that Spider-Man join the team, and he says, "Spider-Man, are you out of your minds? We have a file on him that's a yard long." Mm-hmm. And pretty much says he's too much of a risk. We can't have him on the Avengers, and he swings off out of Avengers facility, and that's where the story ends.
Right. So yeah, I have. Here's the thing. Obviously, we're comparing this to Roger Stern's run on Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. And my first impression so far is that while I do really like this, I do think that he's more at home on Spider-Man. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's weird. I think that I really like his version of the Avengers. I think that everything that has to do with the Avengers is written really well. The stuff with Spider-Man, again, feels a little bit out of place because it feels like they're amping up that, like, goofy kid aspect of him. And he feels like a child next to the Avengers. And yes, he is like, I guess he's not a teenager anymore since he's in college. He's probably like 20 maybe?
Something like that. I mean, he could be 17, 18. In the States, you graduate when you're 17, right? Even here you do. From high school, you could.
Yeah, 17, 18. Yeah, so I guess, technically he could be like 18, 19 still.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. They just really amped that up, and it feels like almost like the not the same character, or
Right.
almost like a caricature of Spider-Man.
Yes, and that's what's ironic is it's the same writer.
Yeah.
That's what I was kind of the most shocked by is that he's not even acting like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So I guess the only question is it Roger Stern overcompensating to try and again give a good reason that he doesn't fit with the team, or is it Peter Parker acting? Is it, you know what I mean? Like, or is it just,
Right.
or is it just this is how Peter Parker acts when he's with other people, as opposed to how he acts when he's trying to solve crimes on his own? It's almost like, is this like a show he puts on?
Right.
Or I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's him just acting up, because I guess it's kind of like his inner dialogue realized, right? Because normally he's just talking to himself, and when he makes quips, it's to himself.
Right.
But now that he has somebody to bounce them off of, they're kind of, his jokes are falling flat.
Right.
Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why it seems like this doesn't feel like Peter. But yeah, I don't know. It's also weird too, because it's not the Avengers at the end of the day that decide if he fits or not. They actually want him on the team by the end of it,
Right.
and then it turns out that he's too much of a risk, and the government won't allow him to do it. So if that were the case, why wouldn't he just show up and be regular Spider-Man? The Avengers can be kind of like, I don't know if you're going to be right for the team, and then he proves himself, and then later gets rejected anyways. Like, I don't know, him being childish wasn't a factor in him joining or not at the end of the day. So
Good point. Yep.
feels like maybe it was just kind of there. I don't know. I'm really not sure why. It's not that it was awful either.
No,
Like,
it was just
I didn't hate Spider-Man in this issue or
No.
anything, but it just felt a little off.
absolutely, yeah.
Mhm.
Especially since we've been reading Roger Stern Spider-Man
Right.
for 50 weeks in a row, right? Like we know Roger Stern Spider-Man, so.
Yeah.
But I agree with that. Let's talk about some other things. I really like one of my favorite things about the whole story was, okay, first of all, I want to point out, of all the people they could get to team up, it's Blackout, right?
Yeah, Blackout.
Blackout and Electro have two almost exactly the same mask designs. Like, you could not find two more similar supervillains. You know what I mean? So it's kind of funny that they just, pick those two to team up. And there's a great scene where, here it is. Blackout is talking about his superpowers, and he's like, he's using his powers on the Rhino, and he's like, encasing you in my solid black light is too lenient a punishment. You should be made to go through the torture I endured, to have your body twisted with the powers of the Black Star, to be merged with the light spectrum. Then you'd know. And then Electro leans over to Moonstone. He's like, solid light, Black Star power. What is he talking about? Anyone who's had even a grade school science education knows that he's spouting gibberish. Black light is just ultraviolet. I think that's so funny.
It's so great. Yeah.
I don't know who wrote Black Star's origin, but it's basically Roger Stern dissing whoever that guy was,
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
Yeah. I think I love that too, because at first we think that Blackout is going to be the leader of this kind of like anti-Avengers that's being formed, because he's the one that breaks out at first. He lets Moonstone out, and then Rhino and Electro, and
Right.
then as the story goes, we kind of realize that Moonstone is the one with the major plan at the end of the day, because she runs off and lets the other three get beat up by the Avengers as she sets the place to blow and then runs out the back door.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of fun, that it was a little bit of a switch, and we think he's gonna be like the mastermind behind the thing, and then Electro and Moonstone are both like, what the hell is this guy even talking about? Let's just do our thing and get the hell out of here.
I think it's great. Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
I was getting his name wrong. It's Blackout.
Yeah, Blackout.
I was calling him Black Star anyway.
Oh,
Did you call him Blackout?
yeah.
Oh, while you were
think
calling... Huh?
I think you even said, is his name Blackout? And I said, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we must have just mixed it.
No,
up
yeah, in my
somewhere,
brain I heard Blackout, but I just double checked. It's whatever, it doesn't matter. But anyway, I just got to point out, because I was looking him up, he was created by Marv Wolfman and Carmine Infantino and Tom Palmer for Nova. So I don't know if he's necessarily dissing Marv Wolfman, but I know that the Nova comic was created as kind of a more innocent, kind of whimsical return to like 60s Marvel. So maybe that's why Blackout was maybe that's the way Blackout talked when he was in the Nova. I'm not sure. Yeah, but anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. So yeah, and again, we've got 4 different characters, 4 distinct personalities. Their motivations are logical. So, you know, I enjoyed that. I enjoy the fact that, you know, the Lava Men, it's like, no, it's not just, let's just beat the crap out of these guys. No, it's a misunderstanding. You know, we're actually above their dwelling, and, you know, let's explain all this and resolve it. So there's definitely, again, it's like you said, this isn't a masterpiece, but there's definitely things in this that you wouldn't see in a typical superhero comic, right?
Yeah.
More thought put into it, I think. So. Yeah. And yeah, so go ahead.
I was gonna say there were a few lines that stuck out as kind of goofy to me, but like I don't know, they didn't also necessarily feel out of place. But they made me laugh.
Sure.
It's when the Lava Men are first introduced. Spider-Man says, Cap, it says something like, "I know what it is. I've been attacked by the Lava Men before." And Spider-Man goes, "Lava Men? You've got to be kidding me, Cap. Lava Men? I don't believe in lava men." And Cap looks at him and, like, while waving his finger, "Belay that, mister. I've been up against lava men, and they're nothing to joke about.
I know.
You better thank your stars that they left." Like, it's goofy, but, like, I don't know, playful. Like, it feels right for Cap to say it. Somebody who had been, like, frozen for a while, and you know, like, like he's a little bit old school in that sense. Like, I don't know, it was definitely a fun interaction. You can tell that there's a bit of an age difference there, and I think that, like, this is something that Spider-Man would say, I think, whether he was with the Avengers or not. Like, he'd be like, "Lava Man, are you kidding me? Like, what's next?" kind of thing, right? So having Cap come in and say, like, you know, respect the Lava Man. Like, you haven't dealt with them before.
It's definitely funny because you're right. Like, we've seen him laugh at, like, I think he was laughing at Leapfrog, and in an upcoming, he laughed at the Ringer. Remember how he didn't take the Ringer seriously? Yeah. And then there's another issue where he's
Boomerang too. I think.
Right. So this is definitely in character for Spider-Man, and I could. Even though I'm not a huge fan of Tom Holland, I could totally see Tom Holland acting like this. Like, just not grasping the gravity of the situation, but Captain America kind of schooling him a little bit. So, yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of just skipping around the issue. I also love the way that we jump around to the different subplots. Like, we see Monica Rambeau. What is she, at a bank, I think? Savings and loan. I just love this little 5-panel, 6-panel sequence. It's just, just little things like that. It makes it feel like the Avengers are real people. They're not just plugged into the plot, you know? So I really like that. Like, again...
It's very cinematic, too, I think, how they kind of bounce back and forth.
Yes.
Like, you're seeing the action unfold simultaneously.
Yeah, right.
I also really love that there are no flashbacks. There's so many times where they have to flash back to, you know, a Blackout saying, "Curse the Avengers, they put me in here before," and, like, have, like, a half page of him talking about how he's put in Project Pegasus, and he's been there forever. Like, we get it. He says that he's been locked in there for a while and he's finally escaped. That's all I need. I didn't need all this extra information to learn who Blackout was and his, you know, history with this facility. They can just kind of run with it.
But, you know, I got to be fair. There is a flashback, and that's when O'Brien, a.k.a. Guardsman, is explaining to the Avengers what happened with the Lava Men. So that technically is a flashback. And we get the classic shot of the floating head in the panel. So we know that he's, you know, describing what's going on. I thought that was cool.
Right.
But still, for the most part, there's definitely, like, it's not like a lot of those J.M. DeMatteis comics where as soon as you hit the flashback, you just skip 3 pages. You're like, I don't need to read this, right? Yeah.
So, okay, with Guardian, what was the point of having him in this story? I guess they had to because he's part of Project Pegasus.
Yeah,
They're
he's the replacement.
How are we going to plug him in?
He's the replacement for Quasar.
For Quasar, yeah.
They got to have a go-to guy to explain to them what's going on. I guess that's it, right?
But did they need to? Because, like, they learned about the Lava Men before... Or was it Guardian who told them about the Lava Men?
Guardsman, yeah. I think, I mean, you could substitute him with someone else, but...
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's not that I hated the character. It's just, like, I feel like he was the one piece of the puzzle that didn't feel like it fit quite as well.
Sure.
He was there to tell the story and then show them the elevator, and then he wasn't really in the story for the rest of the issue.
Right.
Like, actually, do we see him at all during the conflict? We just see the Avengers and Spider-Man fighting the villains. He's just gone.
Because I think he got the crap beaten out of him. Like, he's got a black eye for, like, half the issue, right? So...
Right.
I think he's kind of just sidelined, you know?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
So...
Yeah, I think the last time we see him is right after they drop from the web.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's also funny. I always thought he was I never knew much about him, but I always thought he was a weird character in that he's called the Guardsman, but he's not really a superhero outside of this, but they call him O'Brien, but he's got an Irish accent. I mean, it's not like there's no Irish Americans. Like, I don't know why he has to have an Irish accent, but I thought that was kind of weird, but whatever. I mean, it is nice to see Project Pegasus again, right? Because we're familiar with Project Pegasus. You read Project Pegasus for Quasar Chronology, right?
Oh, yeah.
Of course,
we've read about Project Pegasus even for Spider-Cast as well.
Right. And
some of the team-ups with Thing and everything, yeah.
I also love how... I just got to quickly point out that I think if it were 2020, if they haven't already, I love how, you know, you don't have to make every concept into its own series. You know, I like that Project Pegasus is something they can just go back to once in a while. They can visit it when they need to do story there, but we don't need a mini series called Project Pegasus. We don't need a graphic novel. You know, just leave it as it is. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I also want to point out.
It almost feels like it almost feels like an event that you could put together as like a trade paperback. As like the Project Pegasus series, and then have like the multiple issues, but without having its own like special, 10-issue Project Pegasus comic book to wrap up the story.
You know, I do have a trade, but it does collect those issues of Marvel 2-in-1. But I know what you're saying. It's like, let's collect all the stories that have Project Pegasus. But that's not one story. It's just all the different times everyone's visited there and had their own little adventures.
Yeah, for sure.
Really cool, yeah. I also want to point out, I love the fact that Peter Parker uses his scientific prowess to help, at the climax of the story, right? And I don't know how scientifically accurate this is, but it looks accurate to me, that
it was believable. I'm not sure if what they're saying is true or has any basis in reality at all, but it sounded good. At least
it's logical. right. And I love the fact that he tells, because he's telling Captain Marvel, who can turn herself into energy, that she's got to like sever these connections for this thing that's dangling at the exact same time, so all these rods fall into these holes at the exact same moment. But I want to point out that even though she can move at the speed of light, the time it takes for Spider-Man to see that it's not working and then react and then talk, everyone would be dead, but that's okay. I forgive it. You know what I mean? Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
I still thought it was a really cool ending.
Yeah, I feel like this has happened before with Spider-Man, and I feel like it was done so much better in this issue. I can't remember who he was teamed up with. It was some other character that could turn himself into light energy. Was it the team up with Quasar? The Phantom or something? Actually, maybe it was the team up with Quasar.
Was it Lightmaster? Wasn't that it?
Lightmaster, right. I think that was also the same thing, right? There was this bomb going off, and Spider-Man had to help him like deactivate it by going into the generator.
I think so,
to stop it or something like that, yeah. I think this was done really well. because they set up at the beginning that Spider-Man needs to prove himself to be able to join the Avengers, and then using his knowledge and then another Avengers power to team up to get, to save the day, I think is great. And I think a really fantastic way to end that arc of him like proving himself.
Right.
So
right.
yeah, I really enjoyed reading these. I think the first one was stronger. I don't know if that's maybe just because there wasn't like another character to juggle throughout the entire thing or what. But
sure.
Not that I disliked the other two by any means. I think I'd recommend all three of them.
Right. So I'd recommend them as well. And I guess that's all we got to say this week. Usually we've got a guest or two with us. Unfortunately, this week, everyone is sick or at work or out of town. So you had to settle for Joshua, Mervell, and I. But next week, it's funny, if things go according to plan, the very people who helped me review Marvel Team Up number 113 with Quasar are going to be returning, and that's Monty and Monty's father, Marshall Svalchine. They will be joining us next week as we jump back to the regular monthly issues of Spidey. So yeah, please be sure to join us next week. And Josh, you can take it from here.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah, we want to thank you guys for listening. It really helps when you guys leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts, or you can drop us a line over at HCT Spidercast on Twitter, and you can find us at the Comic Book Syndicate pretty much anywhere else. We actually have a new handle as well on, or new, I guess, channel. I don't know what that would be called.
Yeah, well, it's a completely new channel.
Right, you can find us at the Here Comes the Spidercast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you can find podcast. So we are still part of the Comic Book Syndicate, but Spidercast has its own channel now. So
that's right.
Yeah.
And every week we review a mostly chronological sampling of Spider-Man comics. We do the monthly issues and we do the guest appearances. Like we said, next week we'll be back to the regular monthlies.
And sometimes, I was going to say also sometimes we also jump around and do some like special issues, like we'll review some Spider-Man TV shows or cartoons every once in a while. Maybe one day we'll have like an episode where we'll talk about the movies and how we feel, if they feel like Spider-Man or not. Like we really want to, have some fun with the podcast. If you guys have any suggestions or anything like that, we're definitely open to ideas and we'd love to hear from you. So yeah,
that's right. Absolutely. So yes, until next Monday, this has been Here Comes the Spidercast.
All right. See you then.